It's great to be back here in Iowa. I was here about 2 years ago, and it's one of those cliches, but it feels like home. It is a very, very friendly place. You've all chosen wisely and well, so pat yourself on the back for that. I also like being at this zoo. The Blank Park Zoo is an amazing place. Before I get to this presentation, I just wanted to say, you know, I met John and Kathy a couple of years ago at a Zoos Committed to Conservation conference in Houston, and they blew me away with their presentation because it was so simple, and it was so honest and so direct that they said, we are a small zoo, we don't have much money, we don't have many resources, but we want to make a difference. We want to make our little donation, our little piece of this impactful. And that is so rare in this day and age. Like all of you probably, I've written those checks to the WWF or somebody large and never thought it went anywhere. Sorry if there's WWF in this room, but you know, you just feel you're powerless. And in this day and age, it's very easy to feel powerless and to feel like you don't have an ability to make a change. But when you target your resources properly, you really can make a difference. And whether it's helping us at the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance or the Snow Leopard Trust or any of the other animal causes and conservation initiatives that Blank Park does, I can guarantee you it's making a difference. I can tell you that what you've done here, and I'll talk about it some tonight, it hits the ground and it makes a difference on the ground. So be proud of this zoo and be proud of what they do. Living within your resources and within your abilities is a unique skill, so well done. And to follow on that theme too, you know, an evening for gorillas. I haven't checked tonight, but I'm fairly sure you don't have gorillas here. So you're thinking very far outside the box. I was talking earlier with Ben and some others here that, you know, if a zoo doesn't have something in its collection, it's not going to extend itself quite often. You get a very proprietary sense of the way most zoos behave. Blank Park Zoo behaves differently. And you are able to see a bigger world than what's here on your acreage, and that is also a very admirable thing. And I'm very honored, as I say, to be here to talk about gorillas with you tonight. We're all going to have to sort of imagine that they're here and imagine that you have that smell and that sound and that feel of gorillas nearby. But rest assured that whatever is raised tonight and whatever projects you support, I'm sure will make a difference in the field. So without further ado, I want to say I am Doug Cress. I'm the Executive Director of the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance. I did speak here a couple of years ago, so if anybody was here at that lunchtime presentation, I will change some of it, I swear. It's not like a repeat, you know. I'm not that cheap, okay? Just a little bit of background about PASA to give you some context. We're an umbrella organization that united the sanctuaries that exist in Africa that care for orphan chimpanzees and gorillas and primates that are needing homes. And it is currently members are 18 sanctuaries in 12 different African countries. And by sanctuary, I don't mean a big 48,000 acre national park. I mean it's a place with handling facilities and fenced enclosures, and it's a rehabilitation and a recuperative place. It looks in many ways like a zoo in terms of how we care for animals, but the ultimate goal is to put them back in the wild if possible. The ultimate goal is to send a strong conservation message. The ultimate goal is to make a difference in conservation in Africa. These sanctuaries existed, as I say, before PASA was formed. We were just formed in the year 2000, a very young organization. And these sanctuaries existed on these separate strata right across Africa, and they did not talk. They barely even knew each other existed. And that made no sense because they did the exact same work. And what's nice is that if you've ever worked in Africa or lived in Africa, you know it's not at the forefront of many things. A lot of things don't work well in Africa. I can say PASA works well, and the fact that it works in Africa, and I've never seen it work anywhere else on earth. Now, if there's a problem with the sanctuary in Gambia, the answer might lie with the sanctuary in Zambia. If there's a problem with the sanctuary in Kenya, the answer might be in Congo. If there's a problem in Sierra Leone, South Africa has a solution. These are like long-lost brothers now. They get together for meetings several times a year, and they absolutely are in lockstep with each other. And what I think defines them in a way that nothing else does is they're some of the oldest permanent conservation projects in Africa. Some have been there for 30 and almost 40 years now, on the ground, partners with government, partners with local stakeholders, absolutely vested in the work they're doing. And these sanctuaries, as a result, are not fly-by-night. So many of the projects that come to Africa are gone in 18 months, leaving a void and a lot of anger. But not the sanctuaries within PASA. They are there for the long haul. This is the list of the members. It's not really worth trying to go up and down the list. I just do it for legal reasons, I suppose. I don't know. But some of you might recognize some of the sanctuaries. You can see just a quick look at the countries, though. Congo and Cameroon and South Africa and Sierra Leone. We're all over the map of Africa, literally. It runs right across equatorial Africa more than not. And that is where most of the primates, and certainly all of the great apes, are concentrated in Africa. The 18 members will probably swell to 22 this year. We have a lot of sanctuaries that we've helped get established now. We've kind of changed our focus in terms of creating sanctuaries, helping small ones become more stable. We have a whole different set of sort of standard operations and manuals and so forth they have to all apply by. But we're growing, which is not necessarily a good thing, because that means there's trouble out there. Because these numbers are the ones that define us. We have a lot of primates. We have too many primates. Every sanctuary within PASA is beyond capacity right now. And just for comparison, that 857 chimpanzees is almost 4 times, certainly 3-something times, the number in all the AZA zoos in America. And we're, just to give you a little context, of the 18 sanctuaries, only 14 care for chimpanzees. So really that number divided by 14, it's staggering. We have 3 sanctuaries with over 100 chimpanzees. 100 chimpanzees is a heck of a lot of chimpanzees. And feeding time is noisy. I mean, it is a mess. But also, you know, gorillas, bonobos, drills, you know, the other primates, and this is mostly, it's all monkeys. It's not to be tough on monkeys, but I can't list them all. There's about 30 monkey species we care for as well. We did a study last year that Ben Beck of the Great Ape Trust helped us with, and also the Lincoln Park Zoo, trying to gauge how fast they're coming in. It was a population modeling project to say where will we be in 50 years. They're coming in, chimpanzees at least, at the rate of 56.7% a year. It's a lot of chimpanzees. It's a lot of chimpanzees. We also have a waiting list now. You know, we didn't have that before, but now we're so overwhelmed with the primates that are coming out of the forest that we have to sort of play God on some days and say, all right, you're not as bad as that one, so you wait a minute. This one goes first for the space we don't have. 73 chimpanzees waiting to get in. This gorilla is the one on that list. He is going to be okay. He's in Angola right now. He's going to a sanctuary in Congo. These 2 chimpanzees didn't make it, though. They were at the Wildlife Authority offices in Liberia, in Monrovia, and we couldn't get to them in time. They were confiscated, and I mean, the one has a nice robe, but it didn't make any difference. They both died within a month. And that's standard for us. We get to where we can as fast as we can, but we just can't be everywhere. Because that's what comes in usually, okay? That is what they look like on most days. And that's a day at the office for our staffs, and it's hard. But I can tell you this one right here, which came to a sanctuary in Congo, is okay now. It came about 3.5 weeks ago. And according to our statistics, if a primate can survive the first 3 weeks to 4 weeks in our sanctuary, they'll live at least 3 more years in our sanctuary. At that point, a snake can bite them. Anything can happen. But getting over that kind of a start, where you have malnutrition and all kinds of internal parasites and every other sort of malady, is the less than 0 we work with. But if you work with primates, you know they are resilient, incredible, creative, and emotional animals that can rebound. If you give them the chance, they can come back. You can take a chimpanzee that has lived on a chain for 21 years like that. She has, her eyes are dead. She has no hair on her in large parts. She is simply a shell of an animal, and that's her today in our sanctuary in Cameroon. They had to actually knock her out to get the chain off her because it just wouldn't come off otherwise. But Nama, who lives at a sanctuary in Cameroon, is kind of an elder female in a group now with a lot of youngsters, so she's gotten a second chance at being a normal chimpanzee in a very large enclosure. A gorilla that came into the sanctuary in Cameroon looking like that, with every internal and external parasite known to mankind. I mean, this gorilla had no reason to live, is the one on the right in that picture. And that's about 3 years after she came in there, but Pichu now is about an 8 or 9-year-old gorilla, a little older than this picture here, and she's doing quite well. And a chimpanzee like this one that came into the sanctuary in Guinea, those are his knees, by the way, underneath his chin, tucked up like that, and he hadn't eaten in days and days and days. Looks like that now. I mean, that picture I love because there's no question that's the same face. I mean, the other ones you can maybe say I'm making this up, but no, that's the same one. And we see this little mini miracle, or major miracle, depending on your point of view, every single day at the sanctuaries in Africa. It's against all odds. It's beyond hope in most cases. You wouldn't imagine that things can turn around, but they do. And time again, the sort of dedication of the staffs we have at the sanctuaries and the work they can do with the limited resources and the time and the pressures they have, you get these results. And that's very encouraging. It's what keeps me going to work each day and what keeps them going to work each day, I think. But instead of just keeping primates, instead of just having the world's biggest bowl of chimpanzees or gorillas, which seemed to have been what we were headed at one point there The sanctuaries in this decade, once they started PASA, really started to get a handle on what they wanted to be. They had to be more than just a captive collection, because that was a no-end game. There was nowhere to go with that. And they began to sort of refocus their efforts into other areas, such as conservation and veterinary care and training education staffs and getting all their staffs better trained in different areas. Law enforcement. We do more law enforcement now than I ever thought possible. Of course, we do confiscation, rehabilitation of primates, reintroduction, which I'll speak about in a little bit later, and there are certainly experts here in the room that know more about reintroduction than I do, is another area we're definitely delving deeply into now. But all of these things are not the mandate of a typical sanctuary. It's just because we've been there so long and we're not going away that they've fallen to us. And we fill the role that so many other organizations used to take. But it's worth pointing out that we don't do this alone. The fact that you're in this room tonight, the fact that this zoo is here, is a good example of how we don't do this stuff without your help. I mean, the Blank Park Zoo, just from that chance meeting in Houston a couple of years ago, has been helping PASA over the last couple of years in what you might think of as small ways, and you might think of as the best you can do type ways. And that's not a knock in any way, shape, or form. But it makes a huge difference on the ground in Africa. One of the first things you guys did was send us boxes and boxes of used uniforms. So we take uniforms, we retrofit them and put a PASA badge on them next to the one you already have from your zoo, and we send them to our sanctuaries. This is some of the staff of the Chimfunchi Wildlife Orphanage in Zambia, wearing maybe your uniform or yours, I'm not sure whose they are, but uniforms make a huge difference, not just in how you do your job, because here you need a uniform too, but in Africa a uniform says you belong to this or this or this organization. It's a sign of respect, it's a sign of self-respect, and it gives you a sense of mission. And these uniforms, we've also sent some of your uniforms to the Circopan Sanctuary in Nigeria, make a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So I think it's funny in a way that most zoos used to give their old uniforms to the chimpanzees for enrichment to tear up, whereas we'll take 10 more years out of those things. But that's one of those ways that your zoo has helped. Another one is you guys donated a couple of years ago a large anesthetic machine to us that I think had been replaced by a better one here. And that anesthetic machine was the size of a Buick. I mean, it was beautiful. But we tried like the dickens to get that thing to Africa. But it was going to cost more than it was worth to crate it and send it to a sanctuary in Cameroon that wanted it very badly, because we have 3 sanctuaries in Cameroon, all of which needed an anesthetic machine, and we could sort of centrally locate it and they could all work off it. We just couldn't do it. But after talking with you guys and with some others, we were able to donate it to the Center for Great Apes down in Wauchula, Florida. And I believe somebody here drove it down there. Was it? Oh, you all drove it down there. There you go. All right. Well, that was one of those examples of it was the sanctuary system working. I mean, I remember asking Patty Reagan if she wanted the machine, and she was overjoyed to have it, and it was a delight to be able to pass it on, and your donation still had legs to it. That kind of thing, you just always got to keep thinking what you're throwing away has got value somewhere else. And I'm from Portland, Oregon, where everything has got value when you throw it away. We're like Recycleville, so I'm always thinking that way. But in Africa, even the tongue depressor you're not going to use has got life, I guarantee you. And one other way for sure, and I'll talk about this more in a second, is funding. You guys have given us financial support over the last couple of years that has really been helpful, because it goes into our general programs, which we then put on the ground. And some of the ways, or as I mentioned before, one of our real disciplines is veterinary care. There are not a lot of grade 8 veterinarians in Africa, and not a lot of African grade 8 vets in Africa. We have them. We have the large bulk of them, really. And training these guys and making them a priority in our lives has been invaluable. You can't just keep turning to London or to Berlin or to Paris and say, send us a vet. We've got to do this from within. So since 2003, we've had veterinary workshops each year. We bring the guys in for a week of intensive training and latest skills. We've gotten medical equipment to them and medicine, and they've also made a lot of good friends and partnerships in this community as well. And the objective, which we're achieving, is to create an elite team of African veterinarians that we can then swap around to our sanctuaries to solve crises, and it's working. It works really well. Another way is with education, because what are you doing if you're not educating people? If you're just caring for the biggest bowl of chimpanzees on earth, it's a lonely, lonely world. And we get about 500,000 visitors or so each year in all our sanctuaries combined, and many of them are kids like this, or school groups like this. And these kids then go home and reach about 1.4 million people in communities, concentric circles as it were. So we got to get those kids, got to reach them. So education since 2003 has been another huge priority. And some of the funding you've given has gone to fund these education workshops, just like with the veterinarians, bring the educators in for a week, one central spot, a lot of training with facilitators and experts, and they go back empowered, believe me. And the same objective, which we're also achieving, an elite team of African educators. These guys, believe you me, they can charm a room. I mean, I'm just faking it up here. They can do it. They know how to sell this story, and they are fantastic at reaching kids. We had one case where in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where we have a bonobo sanctuary, and this little girl walked home one day from the sanctuary and saw a bonobo chained up in a yard of a house, which is not that common anymore, but it was enough to happen. She walked to the front door, knocked on the door, and it was the home of a military commander in the Army. And she said, that bonobo belongs to the sanctuary, not with you. It's a little kid. And he was kind of laughing at her, and she just kept adamantly saying, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs in the sanctuary. He finally put her in his truck with the bonobo, drove to the sanctuary, and said, she says I must give this to you. Is this true? And they said, yes, you should. I mean, a military commander? Are you kidding me? I would never do that. But she had that sort of the courage of youth and courage of conviction, and that's the kind of people these little kids here can be. I mean, I love it. Those three, they're looking at him. I mean, this guy's an incredible educator from Cameroon, but the way they're looking at him and watching him just blows my mind. I also love that picture because he says he used to have to pass that picture around the room to the kids. So it'd be a 30-minute wait as they went around the room. We finally got a PowerPoint for him, and it was like his life just changed. Suddenly he was up on the wall, and he just moved along, but that one picture would come back all torn up and frayed and everything. We're also doing a lot of conservation science, which is not, again, the sanctuary thing. We've just blown up our definition of what we do. But we have to because it all fits together. Our sanctuary in Sierra Leone, which has 100 chimpanzees, one of the three, is looking at possibly one day reintroducing some of them back into the wild. But it couldn't until it knew what was in the wild. And there'd never been a survey of all the chimpanzees in the wild in Sierra Leone. So rather than wait around for somebody to find the funding and find the time and the initiative to do it, we did it. So we went and raised the money in about an 8-month period of time, and teams out in the wild, and suddenly they've been doing it since January. It'll be done in about January of 2009, the final results. The actual survey itself will finish in September, sorry, I should say October 2009. And what's amazing is they've done half the country, and they've already found more chimpanzees than they thought existed in the whole country. So it's going to be about 4,000 to 5,000 chimpanzees probably in Sierra Leone, when the estimates before was there's about 2,000 left at all. And this is the kind of work that we're having to do to fill the roles of others. But you have to do it. And once again, the sanctuaries in Africa don't have time to wait. And for some reason, the people who run those sanctuaries are not the sit around and wait kinds. They just aren't, which is good. And reintroduction, which I mentioned before, is, I'll just briefly touch on this because it has relevance later in this talk. It's the physical act of putting animals back in the wild where they came from. Sounds simple. You know, everybody says, oh, you saved a squirrel, put it back in the tree, you know. It's not that easy. When you saw how that chimpanzee came in, he's a long way from being back in the wild. And it goes for any of the animals we have in our sanctuaries. Add to that, it's an extremely complex, political, expensive, dangerous, tricky, difficult thing to do because they came from that forest for a reason. Something was wrong in the forest. So putting them back in the forest sounds like it's oxymoronic. But we found if we don't put value in the forest, the message is one way. The message is there is no value in the forest. That what happens in the forest is not important, that they all have to come our direction. But by putting primates back in the forest, among the many reasons, it adds value, it adds conservation weight and heft to protecting forests. We also have found that when you put a chimpanzee or any flagship species, as they call them, back in the wild, other species come racing back. So one of the projects we have that's put chimpanzees back in the forest in Congo, it now has forest buffalo and elephants and hippos and other animals mushing back into the area. Mushing is not the word I really wanted to use there, but it sounds good. Mushing. But they're everywhere. And once again, animals are smart. Animals know when guns go silent. Because when you reintroduce animals, you don't just open the door and say, well, have a good life. No. You prepare the area you're going to put them back into. You protect the forest they're going to go back into. You hire game wardens and guards. You convert communities on the outsides of the forest. You clear the forest of any communities that moved into there. It's a long, slow process. And you pick very specific animals to go back that are strong enough, resilient, intelligent, and all these sorts of things. And it doesn't always work, but we've had tremendously good success, knock wood, on that so far, and we're not going to stop until we well, we're not going to stop, I think. We're going to keep doing this as long as we have a forest we can go to. So some of our sanctuaries recently have put chimpanzees back in the wild, guanin monkeys in Nigeria. The bonobos went back earlier this year, some of them in Democratic Republic of Congo. Others will have phase 2s next year. And to get to the gorillas, which is kind of the focus of tonight, obviously, sanctuaries we have in Gabon and Congo have put gorillas back in the wild. To date, there's 43 gorillas they've put back into the wild. Others in this room might be able to correct me, but I think most of introduction programs hope for a survival rate in the 30, 40, 50%, something like that, and you consider it successful. I'm being really broad here, but Ben's nodding, and that's a good sign for me. 82% survival rate, that's off the charts. With 6 wild births, that's amazing. We can't really pat ourselves on the back as being all that smart. Maybe we're just lucky. But so far, our numbers are coming in like that. And that gives us reason to keep going. Reintroduction is a difficult science. And the book is being written every day in this one. And that's an area we're going to be, it's a growth market for us. And we're never going to put them all back. You know, you saw 3,000 primates on that one list up there. We're never going to get beyond maybe 10% of that number. But if you put any back and you tell the government that forest is now valuable, that's where your resources need to go, then the message got through. That's what people need to hear. And that's what Africans need to know about their lives, that their forest is where the value is. But gorillas is the real focus tonight, and I'm going to give you a little background on gorillas. You saw on that list we have 850 some odd chimpanzees and a fraction of that number of gorillas. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There aren't that many gorillas, for starters. You know, just on a pure proportional level, gorillas don't exist in the wild in that number. But gorillas in Africa right now are in a terrible state. All the great apes in Africa are. All primates really are kind of on the run right now. But gorillas are difficult for many, many reasons. And you can think of Africa kind of an east and a west for gorillas. If I'm being pedantic for anybody, I apologize, but I'm just going to give you the baseline here. Western lowland gorillas are the ones you're most used to seeing. Virtually every single gorilla in a zoo in the world is a western lowland gorilla. There's one eastern lowland gorilla in a zoo in Europe, but the rest are all western lowland gorillas. There's about 175,000 of them left in the wild. And until last year, that number was 50,000. Then they discovered this huge community of 125,000 they'd overlooked somehow. How do you overlook that? That's like misplacing Brooklyn or something. I don't know. But they did. And so the numbers kind of went shooting back up. They're still an endangered species. They live on the borders of a lot of very difficult areas between human encroachment and all kinds of other issues I'll talk about in a moment. But western lowland gorillas, of all gorillas, are probably the ones that are most, I don't know, stable. In the west, there's also a small population called cross-river gorillas. There's about 330 of those left in the wild. They are extremely rare, almost never seen. Just glimpses of them rushing through forests in Nigeria and Cameroon where they're based, where they are found in the cross-river section of those two countries. This one here is a gorilla named Nyongo. She's the only cross-river gorilla in captivity. She's actually at one of our sanctuaries in Cameroon. And it's just unfortunate for her that she got orphaned and wound up in our sanctuary, but it doesn't look any different to other gorillas, to me or to you probably, but genetically she's different, and that's, she looks a little lonely, I guess, in a sense, but that's kind of Nyongo's life. In the east, it's just as bad, if not far worse, frankly. East African gorillas are divided into lowland gorillas, also called growers gorillas, and mountain gorillas. Mountain gorillas are the ones you'd know from the Dian Fossey movie, Gorillas in the Mist, and it's very romantic, and up in the mountains of Rwanda and Congo and Uganda, and many here may have actually gone up to visit them and go on gorilla treks. You can sit very close like this to them. It's amazing how they've habituated those animals. There's about 750 of them left in the wild, but that's double the number there was just a couple of decades ago. So that's actually a conservation success story. But 750, I mean, come on, that's like a room 3 or 4 times the size, and that's it. You know, that's not a lot of gorillas. And the eastern lowland gorilla is about 5,000. I mean, these are just small numbers. These are not numbers you can do a lot with genetically. In any sense, it's scary times for gorillas. So having a year of the gorilla, having an evening for gorillas, is apropos for sure. And the reasons that you have gorillas are pretty obvious. I mean, they fall prey to all the same issues that befall all the other primates in Africa: the illegal hunting trade, the bushmeat trade, human encroachment just pushing in from all sides, tearing up the forest. Disease, gorillas get many of the same diseases that humans do. Anthrax and Ebola wipe out gorillas on a staggering level. Deforestation, which comes with all the human encroachment. Gorillas are very much compartmentalized in little areas now. And that is difficult for them because they're actually very migratory, roaming animals that need a lot of space. But that's not easy to come by in Africa. If you've been to, a good example is Rwanda. It is a country where the farms push right up to the edge of the national forest where the gorillas are. The gorillas will step out of the forest, grab corn out of the field, and run back into the forest. I mean, they know that line, but it's that tight. There's no buffers left in Africa for gorillas in most places. And the gorillas we get, as you saw, come in terrible shape. But not a lot of gorillas get to us for so many reasons. They're extremely fragile animals, which is hard to imagine. This huge, King Kong-ish looking thing, and if you've never been around a gorilla, you'd assume that they're, chest-thumping savage beasts. They're not. They're extremely docile, extremely skittish animals in a way, and fragile emotionally, very fragile emotionally, so that when we get an orphan who's been through the trauma of being hunted and his family's been killed and been taken by poachers and so forth, many of them just give up. I mean, you see them apparently like they've got a shot and they'll just turn over and just die. They just give up. They don't have the resilience that a chimpanzee does. A chimpanzee is virtually polyurethane compared to a gorilla. So the gorillas that we've gotten are often a much harder fight to keep them alive and get them back to a level of health. The stress factors that take a gorilla down, even in zoos, anybody here that's worked with gorillas in other zoos would tell you, you just got to keep it calm around gorillas. They can really wear that stress, especially as they get older. A male gorilla, when he becomes a silverback and a dominant leader, is just stressed all day long. It's about defending your position. It's about defending your families, your social groups, and that just wears them out. It's just, that silverback is just gray hair, folks. That's all there is to it. And one of the problems we had, although we have a lot of sanctuaries, we have 5 in West Africa that take in gorillas, we had none in East Africa. And that has been a real problem for us because over the past, this decade really, we know of at least 25 gorillas that we could have gotten to and could have saved if we had a place to put them, and we couldn't. We had them held at someone's house. We had them held at this wildlife authority, had them held at somebody's backyard, and we just couldn't get to them in time to a proper facility, and they usually, as I say, gave up, died, something like that. That was really reaching a critical mass with us. When a gorilla that young shouldn't be alone, you're finding it in a box under a house like that, and you're starting with a lot of strikes against you. That's very difficult. And so we reached a point where we had to do something about this. At the same time, they had some gorillas that were surviving that needed a place. It's like a country club, isn't it? Since 2006, the Mountain Gorilla Veterinary Project, which is an organization based in East Africa, in partnership with the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International, which is named after Dian Fossey, of course, had begun to say, look, enough of these gorillas dying. We call PASA, we can't put them anywhere. What are we going to do? Let's just start a place. So in a backyard, really, in an area not too far from the national park where they were being rescued, they began to bring infant gorillas into this area. At this point, since 2006, 9 are sitting there in this backyard. They're getting big. They are males and females. Some are mountain gorillas and some are eastern lowland gorillas. They shouldn't be mixing. And the little caveat of all is that they don't belong to Rwanda. They belong to the government of DR Congo, and they want them back. At the same time, there are 4 other infants being held in a town called Goma on the border between Rwanda and DR Congo, which also needed a place to go. In other words, critical mass. We finally had a bunch of living gorillas, got to do something with it. So we embarked on a project to build a gorilla facility, a gorilla rehabilitation center in East Africa. And we had partners right away. The Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund and PASA decided to go halvesies on this, and we began looking for a place to put a facility. And the community of Taina, which I'll talk about shortly, donated 370 acres, this acres right there, next to the Taina Nature Reserve, to build a gorilla rehab center. And they had some previous contacts and associations with the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, so they were already partners in some other stuff. So it's like, wow, this is perfect. You can work with that forest area right there. You can begin to rehabilitate gorillas. You can actually be productive rather than having them stuck in a little box a walled area in downtown Rwanda. But just to give you some background, where's Taina? Well, here's Democratic Republic of Congo. It's basically all of Central Africa. It's a country the size of half of or a third of the U.S. really. And this little box up here is the area I'm going to focus on right here. There's Rwanda, Uganda up here. Over here is Kenya. And the area I'm pointing into, this is Taina over here. And this little park here is the Taina Nature Preserve. Some of the bigger national parks in Democratic Republic of Congo, Kahuzi-Biega and Maiko, other parks like that. You might have heard of them before. They're large. They're wild gorilla populations. The key is these parks were not connected. These populations couldn't reach each other. So as we're trying to build and work corridors now to get these gorilla populations back in communication with each other, and Taina plays a major role in that. Therefore, having a gorilla rehab center on the edge of that would be a productive and a positive thing to do. You can see, once again, there's Goma where those 4 were being held. Down here in Rwanda is where some of the others are being held. So we got our site, we got our forest area, and we got a long way to go from this place to get those guys up there, because it's not all flat roads, believe me. But it's a project to do, and it's a project we have to do. So that just a quick look at the team that currently is working this project. Besides ourselves and Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund, there's the Wildlife Authority of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. That word gives me more fits. Democratic Republic of Congo, which is called the ICCN, the Rwandan Wildlife Authority, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is funding a lot of this construction, Disney's Animal Kingdom, which is their zoo down there in Orlando, as well as Disney's Wildlife Conservation Fund, and Conservation International. We're all partners in this. It's easier to see this pretty picture like this, where you see logos and everybody looks snappy. It's an interesting partnership. It is at times unwieldy, but it's what you need. It's a broad-based initiative that you need to pull off a project this large. So we started by drawing. This is easy. You just start drawing little pictures how you want it to look, and that was kind of fun because anybody could be right or wrong there. But smartly, we got Disney's people on this. They draw for a living, right? So they started drawing the designs for this, which is great. They get that, you know. So one day, it looked like this. But so this is the idea where the facilities are held here. This is about a 4-acre outdoor enclosure for the gorillas, which then attaches to the 370 acres that would be fenced in, which then goes on to the national park. The idea of this whole project was rehabilitate and reintroduce these gorillas when appropriate, if you can. I mean, you never can tell whether you can or not, but we don't want them to come sit here for the rest of their life if they don't have to. We want to make this part of a process to put gorillas back in the wild. That's why being next to a national park or nature preserve was important and part of a corridor connecting process. So I was very fortunate in one of my many trips to Congo recently to go for the opening ceremony on this. That was a trip, let me tell you. We went up with local kings called Mwamis, and these are 2 of the Mwamis in the area right here, the guy with the hat and the guy next to him with the brown coat, who hold incredible sway in those areas, and they have to sort of go and explain to the communities what you're going to be doing, and believe me, dancing, a lot of dancing. But it was an amazing thing to be there for because the communities were really excited about this project, not just because it would bring jobs and bring focus and so forth, but they already got the thing about forest. They understood where gorillas and forest and what that means to their culture and what it was being taken away. And this is an area of Congo, which, if you followed the news recently, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of wars. The Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has not been a stable region for a long time. So these people want something different, and we're offering suddenly a different look, a different feel for the area. And this center, which is called the Cress Center, Gorilla Rehabilitation and Conservation Education. Why "and" got a big A, I don't know, but that's how they wanted to do it. But also Grass in French works as well, so Grace and Grass. The Cress Center was embraced wholeheartedly. And this little kid, I swear, everywhere I went, that one little kid he found the camera and was a dancing fool. That kid, if you look at these photos, and they were all over like for 5 days of dancing, that kid was always front and center. I don't know how he did it. We went for a groundbreaking ceremony, and we went with a whole bunch of dignitaries, and you march up into the rainforest, way up into the nature preserve. This lady, by the way, went in high heels. She is the local wildlife forestry director for the eastern half of the country. She went up in high heels. I was falling down hand over fist climbing, sweating like a dog, pouring rain, and she went looking like that. And she wasn't being carried. She just went skidding up that mountain. So they dig a hole and you plant a rock, and then you drink palm wine and spit it into the hole. And it's a wonderful ceremony. I was extremely honored to do it. But then they turned around and said, it's going to be right here. And we're in the middle of a rainforest. And they said, we'll just clear all these trees out. It'll be right here. And we who had designed and planned this thing had not seen the area they wanted to do it that way yet. And we said, oh, that's so nice. We've just put this rock in the ground, but you know, and they were thinking about cutting down acres and acres of trees of a rainforest. And so a lot of real quick talking and politicking went on. So we kind of marched down the mountain as it was raining until we found an old cornfield at the base of the nature preserve, which had been abandoned, and we could work with that. And so we were able to clear an area which was already cleared and was sort of degraded area because it was a farming area for quite some time. And to date, still to date, no trees have been cut down, not even a big rock has been moved. They've actually re-altered all the plans around whatever's there on the ground. But we dodged a bullet and a half. I could just see the headlines if we had leveled a rainforest to put up a gorilla sanctuary. So that was going to be bad. But this is one of the early days when the team is out there and just, you could just see every single day, people were getting more and more excited about where this was going to go, this project. And it was really fun to watch that community buy in. Africa, as I said, can be very jaded sometimes. Another project, another something. These guys, you know, they're slow to sort of really trust, but especially in the eastern half of Congo. But they do, and they did, and that was very exciting. And the construction started, and it's moving along a pretty good clip here. This was the cornfield, now it's all been cleared. This area is some of the buildings, there'll be outbuildings for it. This is the base of where the handling facility will go in the larger building, and then up that hill is where all the fenced-in areas for gorillas to sort of rehab and work out their kinks goes after that. But it has not been a project without problems, and you know, it's at the risk of badly mangling John F. Kennedy's words, you know, you don't do things because they're easy, you do them because they're hard. Well, people have said to us as the problems have mounted with this project, which I will touch on, why are you doing it in a place that's got war? Why are you doing it in a place that's got, you know, famine and displaced communities? Why are you doing it where there's so much hunting? Because that's where the problem is. If you do this in Columbus, Ohio, it's not that hard, but it doesn't make any sense either. And that's why we're doing this in a place where it has to be. This is, if you're going to solve the problem, you might go where the problem is. So some of the problems, well, sorry, I got ahead of myself there. The construction is moving along nicely. It's designed to hold 15 gorillas at the start, and then it will be duplicated. Another half of the building will go up for 30 gorillas. Guarantee you, it'll be full in the New York minute. That's just the way sanctuaries are. They get filled. The second you hang that shingle out, they all start coming in. And once again, reintroduction is the primary goal. That was actually the only reason the U.S. government gave us the money to build it, was they said if reintroduction and rehabilitation is the ultimate goal, we'll fund this project. But as I say, setbacks were rife. The military moved through that area several times, and that really was problematic because they would conscript a lot of our builders. They would knock down what we'd built. Then rebels came back from the other direction and burned the radio station at the area, which was one of our primary communication sources. This is this picture of some of the guys looking at the radio station burned down. And what really knocked us for a loop was the head of Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund's Africa projects, Dr. Alicia Lilly, passed away very unexpectedly and very quickly from a brain aneurysm in May. She was gone in a week. She held every card, and that left us in a free fall we're still scrambling to sort of right the ship from. That's Africa. You know, these things are Africa, and these things are why conservation is hard. That's why anything in Africa can be hard. But it's a project worth doing, and it's one we're not giving up on. So we're back on it again. The project is underway, again, with the rebuilding. The military has quieted down. The rebels have been pushed back onto their own property near the Rwandan border. We'll be hiring a director of this facility in the next 4 weeks. And we begin preparing the transfer of gorillas. In other words, going through the motions of it as of December. The target is to move them in February of 2010 and be able to close the facility down in Rwanda and have this place as the primary drop-off point for any gorilla in East Africa, because most are going to come out of Congo anyway. There's very little chance to come from someplace else. What makes this necessary for us, and which is what our avenue in gorillas is that it's on 2 levels. I've mentioned before, it's about communities and it's about gorillas. The gorilla angle is obvious. You know, the gorillas, they don't belong in a backyard in Rwanda. As much as that is the best we can do for them right now, they deserve better. The species deserves better. And we need this in the way we do our business within the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance. You need a permanent facility you can work from. You can't just be shifting all the time. But for the people, it's just as important. It's something about giving them back a piece of their life that's not there. It's about giving them back a sense of pride, a sense of ownership, a sense of value that has been taken away by themselves, by others. I don't want to get into that. It's just not there for them right now. But when you go up to that area, there's a little primary school right at the edge of the area where we're building. It says, when we use the primary school, it's ready, ready, ready for conservation. I mean, the kids did that, okay? If kids can think that way, if kids can feel that way about gorillas, and that's a pretty accurate gorilla painting, might I add, you know, that gives us hope. And as much as we may have burned radio stations and project setbacks with this gorilla sanctuary, it is our take on gorilla conservation, and it's what we can do, and it's what is needed in the area, and that's why we're dedicated to it. So we're the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance. We're on the web. We're easy to reach. I've talked to many of you before in the past. I'd love to talk to you again. And I want to thank you very much for listening to me tonight. There's the end, which you always get, these kind of clever pictures. But once again, thank you for your support in the past and hopefully in the future. And I will happily take questions if you have any. Thanks.